If evolution is true, then you're nothing more than a cosmic accident with an anxiety and yes, a Netflix account. That's it. But what if you're being lied to? What if the evidence actually points to a designer and points to God, and they're just changing the facts? You need to check out this video because Darwin is gonna sweat here.
Evolution has 4 postulates upon which it rests, okay? Creation science also has 4 postulates that it rests on. And you have to begin to, before you really get into the origin theory itself, you have to understand those postulates. So evolution is based on 4 postulates. The first postulate is that life comes from non-life. One of the biggest questions that I get from viewers is, Major, is this really true? Does evolution really demand that we really talk about origins? The 3 founders of evolutionary theory, most people only know Charles Darwin, but he was not the only one, and he was not the first. Herbert Spencer, a British philosopher, was the first one to propound the theory of evolution. And then Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace together wrote a scientific paper on the idea. All 3 of them made statements that origins is not just about how life changes, but also about how it began. So that's the first postulate, that life comes from non-life.
And that's, by the way, if you don't mind me interrupting here, and that's very important for you to share, because a lot of people think the discussion of evolution is a separate discussion from how life actually started, the building blocks. But what you're saying is, look, when they do bring up the discussion of evolution, it's a unifying theory. They connect both of those 2 topics.
I say argue with Charles Darwin, Alfred Russel Wallace, and Herbert Spencer. And I show that all 3 of them, in their theory of evolution, all of them propounded that evolution also explained how life began. And Charles Darwin is most famous for that, for saying that all you need for life is a little pond somewhere and a few salts and acids. He's making a claim about not only about how life changes, but also about how it began. So that's our first postulate, and you have to know and understand that. The second postulate is that all life, complex life, came from single-celled life. And of course, the science shows that that is not true. While we do have single-celled life forms, okay? We have no 2-celled life forms. We don't have 3-cell life forms. We don't have 4-cell life forms. We don't even have 5-cell life forms. That is, there's nothing in between. We jump from single-cell life forms, most of which are bacteria, to complex life forms like worms, all right? Amoeba, and myself, right? I'm a complex, multi-celled life forms. There's nothing to fill in that gap. So science supports that.
Okay, now I got to interrupt you some more here.
All right, go ahead.
You know, as somebody who, had these clips on the platform, I had a lot of people saying, wait a minute, Dr. Coleman, aren't there such a thing as 2-celled life forms out there? 3-celled life forms? Those don't exist at all?
Actually, no. Now, we have, for instance, yeast and what we call blue-green algae. Actually, blue-green algae is not an algae, it's a bacteria, okay? And while they live in clumps, all right, just like we live in groups, they are single-celled life forms. The same applies to yeast. And there were some interesting experiments done about 15 years ago about yeast. Evolutionary scientists wanted to see how fast yeast evolved and how fast yeast cells could adapt to salty water. So they put the yeast in salty water, and they were surprised, and of course yeast multiplies very fast, that's why we use it to make bread, okay? They were surprised to find that in just 50 or 100 generations of yeast, which is just a few hours, okay, that it had already adapted to the salty water. And what surprised them was that it was too fast. That is, evolution is supposed to be a long process, but these yeast adapted to the salty water so fast, it showed clearly that the genes were already present in the yeast. All right, so actually those comments about blue-green algae, which is a bacteria, and yeast actually support what I said. While these are single-celled life forms, just as I said, we have a big jump to the next group of life forms, which are multi-celled, complex life forms. And I've asked many people, I'm saying, so give me a 3-celled life form, and I don't mean yeast or bacteria that live in groups, all right? You also have to remember that we have parasites as single-celled life forms, or even complex life forms, which demand a host to continue the life to support, which again supports creation science. A parasite cannot live by itself. How did it get its start? You had to have complex life there to begin with. So that was our second postulate. Then we go to our third evolutionary postulate, that time and chance are what drive evolution forward. And this is an interesting one. That is, given enough time, anything is possible. But of course, what is it that allows evolution to violate the laws of probability that apply to everything else? Everything else is governed by probability, but evolution somehow magically is not. And I tell people, I'm saying, the chances of you leaving here this evening and going outside and getting struck by lightning are 1 in a million. Scientifically call that 10 to the 6th power, 1 in a million. The chances of you or I winning the lottery is 1 in a billion, 10 to the 9th. And that's probably why I'm sitting here and not out of my sailboat, okay? 1 to the 9th. Do you know what the probability of one simple 100 unit protein is? The probability of that. It's the same as putting together a 100 letter sentence, same as, that makes sense, not random letters, 100 letter sentence, the same as that probability. It is 10 to the 116. Now, most people can't comprehend a number like that, but just to give you an idea, I already told you that winning the lottery, getting struck by lightning is 10 to the 6th. Winning the lottery is 10 to the 9th. If we took all the atoms in the entire visible universe, by the way, a dot on a period on your paper, 1 trillion atoms can fit on that. That's how small an atom is. Do you know how many atoms there are in the entire visible universe? 10 to the 70. That's all. The chance of a 100 unit protein assembling itself is 10 to the 116. It is mathematically impossible. Michael Denton, the biologist from Australia, he said in his 1986 book, Evolution, A Theory in Crisis, he said, that comes as close as possible in my mind to proving that evolution is false. It is impossible. Time and chance are evolution's enemy, not their friend. And then the fourth postulate is that minor genetic variation within species explains the macro differences that evolution claims. That is, fish turned into cows because we have cows that are different colors, or dogs and cats that are different colors and different sizes. Gregor Mendel, in the 1850s and 60s, a priest, showed using peas that, and we call him the father of modern genetics, he showed that all these differences that we see are caused by genes, and that there were no new genes which created. All the genes were there in the original pair. Every major postulate for evolution has been scientifically proven to be false.
You know what shocked me so much in this debate is how desperate our culture is to protect evolution. Christians are always mocked that we are the ones who walk by faith and we're not looking at the evidence, and the science, the ones who follow science only, they're the ones who look through the evidence. Yet listen to what Major Coleman said in this discussion. What a lot of things they believe, you cannot observe it. There's not even tangible evidence for it. I mean, we will believe a protein can assemble itself against odds of 1 in 10 to the power of 116. That's a 1 with 116 zeros. But laugh at the idea of an intelligent designer. You've got to be kidding me. This is not even science versus faith. It's rebellion versus reality. I mean, guys, we're not dealing with a lack of evidence here. We're dealing with people who don't want there to be a curator, because if there is a God, then they're no longer in control. That means your body isn't your own. That means your truth might not be true. And that's terrifying when your whole identity is built on, don't tell me what to do. Here's what nobody wants to say out loud. Evolution is a lifeboat for moral autonomy. If we're just highly evolved animals, then sin is just instinct. Lust, natural. Abortion, population control. Pride, survival of the fittest. You see how convenient that is? But if we're curated, our behavior has meaning and purpose. Suddenly, the lies we tell ourselves stop working, and suddenly there's accountability. And that's what this fight is really about. You want to talk about science? Cool, man. Let's do it. But don't tell me that we Christians are anti-science when you're out here defending a worldview that needs blind faith and randomness, dead matter bringing life, and trillions of lucky mutations without a single transitional form to show it. Major Coleman, he didn't just destroy evolution here. He exposed it for what it really is, a philosophical smokescreen, a substitute religion, a narrative built on assumptions that collapse the second you stop treating science like a golden calf and actually think. So let's stop pretending the evidence is neutral. It's not. It points to a curator. It points to a design. And if you're honest enough to follow the design to its author, it'll point you straight to Christ. All right, guys, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Daily Pursuit of Truth and leave a like.